Welcome back to another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling, part 3 of this week's episode. I'm Sean Meyers, joined by Sean Saputo. We've already discussed Monday Night Raw, the qualifying matches for Money in the Bank, and some of the other big takeaways. We've done the same for SmackDown on Tuesday, the one men's qualifying match, the one women's qualifying match, plus the other big happenings. Now we're going to talk a little bit off topic from Raw and SmackDown. We're going to talk, excuse me, wasn't ready for this apparently. We're going to talk about the worst part of year for a lot of the superstars. That is the potential upcoming wave of releases. Sean, it is that time of year again, and in recent years there hasn't been as much because they needed to build up the depth of talent on both Raw and SmackDown once they did the brand split now about 2 years ago. I think that they're to the point now where they have plenty of guys on the roster, guys and gals, and the ones who aren't cutting it, who they don't have a storyline for, you move on from. So with the addition of probably at least a dozen superstars for call-ups after WrestleMania and probably another 4 or 5 returning from injury, it's just a numbers game at this point, isn't it? That you have all these people coming up, you have more waiting in the wings in NXT. Some of the people who aren't getting it done on the main roster or maybe unhappy, they might be looking for a job sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's just one of those times. A lot of those who come onto the roster may not necessarily have the successes that they're looking forward to when they come up to the main roster, or if they just started on the main roster and haven't had the success that they've wanted. It's that time where you have to figure out where do you go from here and how do you determine who stays, who goes.
Now, there's nothing official as far as when these transactions might come, but typically it has been around this time of year, and it comes in bulk. In years past, we would see one name would come out early in the day, and then you go back, another name comes out. Before long, you might have 4 or 5 guys that are future endeavored, and it could continue throughout the week. So, again, maybe it won't happen like that this year, but that has been the track record of WWE to have these a mass exodus of talent in terms of letting some of the superstars go. So you start to question who might guys be that could be potentially in their last couple of weeks with the company. I think that while you never want to see anyone go, and you understand how earth-shattering it is for each individual, whether you like them or not, it completely changes their life. It's a real discussion at this time. So I've come up with a list of about a dozen or so people who I think could be in jeopardy. Not to say that they will be gone, but I think that they have to be maybe a little bit of nerves this time of year. Probably checking their phone pretty frequently, hoping that they don't get that pink slip via email nowadays. I'll start and just run down my list, Sean. You can give me maybe some names that I've left off or some that you disagree with. But the names that I have, and again, this is potential people that could be in line. I don't think all of these people by any means will be gone. But the names that I've come up with, I'll start alphabetically. Apollo Crews, Dana Brooke, Kurt Hawkins, Fandango, Heath Slater, Mike Kanellis, R-Truth, Rhino, Sin Cara, Tamina, Ty Dillinger, Zack Ryder, and a pair of tag teams, the Ascension and the Colognes. Again, I hope that for their sake, those people aren't ultimately on the chopping block. And again, I don't think that you'll see 14, 16 people go, but you could very easily see 6 to 8 to maybe 10. So I think that those people are certainly ones that I could see the company moving on from.
I think there's going to be, at least this year, a wave of retirement that maybe limits the amount of wrestlers to get cut. I think Big Show, being that he was working on an injury, was getting healthier, got injured again. I think Big Show might be time for him to throw in the towel. Kane, with his political career, I think he's going to be amongst that wave of retirement. And I think Goldust, it's just time for him to hang it up. So there's 3 names right there that I could see fall in the retirement cycle.
Interesting you
clones,
mentioned
yes.
Gold. I want to touch on Goldust real quick because when I was looking through, he seems like a guy, maybe he would be on a list of guys that could be potentially released, but I thought two things immediately. One, they love Dusty Rhodes. They've done a lot to honor Dusty Rhodes. With Cody now gone on his own, they need some sort of connection to the Rhodes family, and Goldust certainly fits that bill. Secondly, Cody Rhodes being gone, he's doing big things on his own now with the Young Bucks and others with the All In event in Chicago upcoming. That's sold 10,000 plus tickets. I don't think you want to give any more ammunition to him and his friends by letting Goldust go as well, and seeing that Goldust would probably join that group and maybe thrive in that role. So I think you hang on to him whether he continues to wrestle or not, because you want that connection to a great piece of WWE history, and you don't want him going and becoming part of what is sort of the competition now.
Some other names that came to mind that I could see: Alicia Fox, Tamina, and I don't like the Ty Dillinger one. I don't think Ty Dillinger has been given enough chance yet to be warranted of a spot in being on the list to go. I'm surprised you didn't have Curtis Axel on there.
Well, so I think Axel and Bo Dallas, what they've done in the past 3 to 6 months has saved them. I think that both those guys, we know that they're second generation guys, so that sort of works in their favor, but I think that they probably would have been in real peril if not for the run. And ironically, they win their first match of the entire year on Monday Night Raw. So that they're now in the win column. They're seemingly ahead of some other tag teams. Again, you know, you look at teams like the Revival. They've had some bad luck. So, you know, maybe they'll get things straightened out. But right now, the Revival are struggling. I think Breezango, since they've come to Raw, they're not doing the funny clips of the Fashion Files anymore. So that was sort of their appeal recently. And Rhino and Slater have fallen by the wayside. So I think Axel and Bo Dallas, the B team, as they were recently dubbed, they're ahead of all those teams right now. So I think that they're safe. Going back to your Ty Dillinger point, I agree with you that he shouldn't be, but I know how this company works, and it seems like if they don't like a guy, they don't have confidence that they'll be able to ever use a guy in a prominent role, that he could be gone. And I have Apollo Crews on the list. I love Apollo Crews. I think he's uber talented in the ring. When my friend and I went up to a show at Penn State earlier this year, in large part to see Elias, my friend who's not a wrestling fan, he was most impressed by Apollo Crews of anyone on the entire Raw show in terms of their in-ring performance, because he does just really highly athletic stuff. But again, you look at the company, if they don't have a use for people, you know, it doesn't matter how talented you are or if you deserve an opportunity. If they don't want to give you that opportunity, they won't. So, you know, Apollo Crews, Ty Dillinger, guys that have a lot of ability, guys that could be pretty over if given the right storyline. But I just don't have a lot of faith in WWE at this point, because when you look at the track record of both of them, it doesn't seem like the company wants to give them a chance. You look at Ty Dillinger, did almost nothing despite getting a lot of cheers from the fans. Of course, the chance for the 10. And Apollo Crews, same situation. You know, when has he really had much of an opportunity? So I just don't think the company sees much in those two guys, despite the fact that their talent's pretty clear to us.
Who are here? Let's expand upon this just a little bit. Who are 3 bigger named wrestlers that you think could get the cut, but probably won't?
That's a tough one. Rusev would be one, and I think it's because the company. There's been rumors that he's been unhappy. There's been rumors that, you know, maybe some of the dealings with Rusev have not been as easy as what they maybe should have been. And you look no further than the Greatest Royal Rumble and how that really unfolded. It was supposed to be him against the Taker, then it wasn't. It was Jericho, then he was back in the match. He got thrown into the WrestleMania U.S. title match at the last minute. That one was sort of hastily thrown together. I look at a guy like Rusev. I think he's ruffled feathers, and I don't think that a lot of people, or at least the people that are the most important in terms of making decisions, really care that he's over. I think they say he's over because of a stupid chant, and we don't really want him to be over. We've seen that with other guys before. They get over on their own. Sometimes the company doesn't necessarily embrace that. I think Rusev's the first name that comes to mind, and I certainly hope not. He's going to be in Money in the Bank, so he's at least good for a couple weeks, but after that, anything could happen.
Yeah. You got two other ones, or is that really the only one?
You're making it tough on me here, because I guess it depends on how big you're talking. We're not going to see someone that's a fringe main eventer or a high mid-carder probably just let go on a whim. I think it would be, if you're that big, it would have to be, you would have to do something wrong to be let go. But I to your point, I think there typically is at least one or two fairly big, surprising names each year. So, that certainly could happen. All the guys that I had on my list are sort of lesser guys. I think that probably the biggest names on there were Apollo Crews, Ty Dillinger, maybe Zack Ryder, and Heath Slater. Those were the names that I thought were maybe the most prominent. I don't know that there's going to be any big-time stars, but do you have any that come to mind?
I have at least two. One, Jinder Mahal. Now, I understand Vince, loved the new look Jinder when he turned him on and everything, but he is not doing anything. And even putting him in this feud with Roman Reigns, he is not doing anything to benefit the product. He's a guy that... I
would agree that he's tough to listen to. His promos just, man, they kill me. And I know some of that is his character, but man, it is hard to listen to a Jinder promo for more than about a minute. His matches generally are, at best, okay. I think he had a really good match against AJ Styles when he lost the title. Other than that, nothing's really blown me away. But what indication do you have? What have you seen that would lead you to believe that they might move on from him?
Just the simple fact that no matter storyline he is in, and now putting him with Reigns, this is the worst possible thing. It's almost like they're trying to see how, who can get booed more between him and Roman. And just Jinder's title run was so bland. It was constant, needing help to win. And he never should have had the title on him. He wins the title. He goes nowhere with it. And ever since he lost the title, and they put the strap on him for the India thing, and that had slight success over in India, and they put him in the match at Greatest Royal Rumble and expected him to shine, being that from India, and there was no appeal to it at all.
The one thing I would say,
he has no appeal. And I know, and you can look at people who do, serious, we're trying to become a serious podcast, but they're able to talk about, it's good heel heat, that's the whole point of his character, da-da-da-da-da-da. I understand the point of the character, but you also have to understand people just sit there, and eventually it's gotten to the point where people don't boo when he even comes out. He'll and boo, and then it's just crickets the rest of the time. There's no reaction whatsoever.
Here's my thoughts on good heat, bad heat, all that. If the person is showing up to see that person or watching them on TV, then any reaction is a good reaction. If they change the channel when that person comes out, or they don't go to the show, or if they are at the show, they go to the bathroom when that person comes out, whether you're getting a good heat or bad heat, you can't have a person that makes people not want to watch. That's really the only takeaway for me, And with Jinder, I feel like at least people I talk to, yourself included, when Jinder comes out, that's one of the matches that you probably don't want to see unless he's going against someone really interesting or really talented.
Yeah.
That being said, I think there's no chance. The company continues to use him in prominent spots. I think if they lost faith in him, they would really minimize his role, and they haven't. They continue to use him in roles, winning titles, going against Roman Reigns. So I don't think he's in jeopardy. But as far as guys that you could say they're not getting the job done, I would agree with that. But I think the company values him far too much to consider moving on from him already.
I think one that would be a shock would be Baron Corbin. I myself am a Baron Corbin fan, but it just does not seem like the WWE is in the boat with Baron Corbin, and it just does not seem like he is going to ever get to finish a push that he has started with the WWE. It seems every time he starts, there's either something in the back that happens, or there's something, you know, creative just doesn't, think it's going to end up working and paying off down the long run, and they pull on him all the time.
Yeah, he's a guy that, keep in mind, he wrestled John Cena at SummerSlam not too long ago. He was the Money in the Bank winner. Nothing's come of that. Missed opportunities, maybe some of his own doing, maybe some of creative just not putting him in the right situations. He's a guy that I don't expect him to be released, but I think that it would be more logical for him than for Jinder, because they're still using Jinder in a big way. With Corbin, they really haven't been. I mean, they've used him sort of here and there. He every now and then gets nice opportunities. He was just in a qualifying match this past week, but he came up short with Bobby Roode winning. That one would be a little surprising, but I think there's at least a minuscule chance of that. I think Jinder's pretty much safe. But again, you never know. I mean, this company has let go of some pretty popular people at pretty perplexing times, so you never know what goes into it. We can only base it on either what we see on TV or what we read. We don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes, and it's not always based on in-ring talent or how over you are with the fans. It could be based on if you have some issues backstage, have some issues outside of the ring. So that always is an X factor in trying to determine stuff like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. There are always one or two a year that you sit there and go, wow, that just happened. And I don't know, those are two names that just come to my mind.
Let me touch on this then. So again, my list that I made, I only have two women on there. I have Dana Brooke and Tamina. And I think maybe Maria Kanellis, if they let go of Mike Kanellis as well, but Maria hasn't been on, just having a kid recently. Do you see any other women? Because Dana right now is a valet. Tamina hasn't been on for some time. Do you see any other women that could potentially be on the chopping block?
Yeah, Dana, Tamina, Alicia Fox, Maria Kanellis.
You don't think maybe Alana?
No, they won't get rid of Lana. Lana has too much appeal when she's with Roos. She's perfectly fine as a valet. I can't see them doing away with her.
Mickey James?
Maybe Mickey James. She's still in a pretty good spot right now.
Right.
I mean, she's probably on a veteran's contract anyways, where it's not going to, make or break the bank if she stays or goes. Maybe just 3, honestly.
Yeah.
Or 4. I don't know. I think having Mike Kanellis and Maria come up to the main roster first thing was the absolute worst thing for them. I mean, no offense to Mike Kanellis, but Maria is the prominent one out of the two of them, at least WWE atmosphere, and he's not good.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry.
was sort of.
I was not a fan when it happened.
I agree. I was perplexed when they signed him. It seemed like she was the one people were more excited about. Certainly, that guys. I'm coming apart here.
That's why.
Well, it's tough because pretty shortly after they came up, he already was doing nothing, and then she got pregnant. They had to take her off, so he has absolutely nothing to do when she's sitting at home. And I don't know what the time frame is for maybe when she could get back. It's not good PR to let go of someone who just recently gave birth, but again, you're not doing anything with Mike Kanellis. And I saw he tweeted the other day, "I miss wrestling" or something along those lines. It has to be tough for these people that aren't being used. So I don't know. I don't know what they're ultimately going to do, but I'm always. This is my mindset. If you're running a wrestling company, you're gonna have guys that are wrestling the warm-up matches, guys that are not winning a lot of matches. But the goal should always be to feature everyone as well as you legitimately can. Doesn't say not everyone's going to be main eventers, not everyone's going to be popular with the crowd, not everyone's going to be a person who wins the majority of their matches. People have to lose. Someone wins, someone loses. But you can use those guys better than how they're being used. You know, you look at a guy like Heath Slater, and he's paired with Rhino. They were over on SmackDown. They had a nice run. Was it sustainable? Probably not. They're doing nothing now. And that's a guy that would get a better reaction than probably at least a third or a fourth of the guys that are appearing weekly on TV currently. Same with Ty Dillinger.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we mentioned the Fashion Police. They've done nothing since they've come over to Raw. And you go back to NXT, Tyler Breeze was a stud in NXT, an absolute stud. Everything about him down there worked. They gave him, what, a 3-month run on the main roster with that gimmick. Didn't like it, pulled the string on it. Now he's in a tag team that's not really being used. I mentioned Ty Dillinger. What if Tyler Breeze is a guy that ultimately could be seeing his career come to an end at WWE?
Maybe. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Do you see any tag teams? Because I mentioned I thought the Ascension, the Colognes, and maybe Heath Slater and Rhino. Do you see any other tag teams? I would think someone like Anderson and Gallows are safe because of the contract that they signed and obviously who they're friends with. I think the Revival still will get another chance, but they're starting to look like they could be on the outside looking in. Any other big moves potential on the tag team side?
Ascension for sure. I don't know how they're still there to begin with. I could see Breezango. I could see those two for sure. I could see Heath Slater and Rhino. Other than that, I think every other tag team is just about fine because half the tag teams anymore are makeshift tag teams anyway.
And it seems like, to your point, makeshift tag teams. There's some pretty good tag teams in the wings waiting, however. Like Authors of Pain have done very little since they've come up. It almost seems like they don't have a role for them. And we're still waiting for Sanity on SmackDown. So you get 2 new tag teams. You figure some are going to have to go by the wayside. But to your point, maybe they'll just go with some of these more traditional teams and break up some of the makeshift teams that we've been seeing on Raw.
Well, going away from the roster cuts for a minute, I really think that dual-branded pay-per-views have already caused an issue with what is going to be run at the pay-per-views. I think they needed it. I don't like it already. I like doing 5 dual-branded pay-per-views, your major ones, but I'm already seeing an issue where it's going about where having these dual-branded pay-per-views are going to limit usage of necessary matches in pay-per-views. If it would have went back to the normal formula of having the way it used to be was SmackDown had 3 or 4 they have 5 dual-branded pay-per-views with Money in the Bank now. There's 7 left. Raw has a bigger roster. Raw gets 4, SmackDown gets 3, or you leave that month out like they used to, and each one gets 3, and then you have your 5 major pay-per-views, you open up the ability to have all of your titles defended. And we've gotten to the point now where the tag team division on both sides have been limited to or not utilized on just their show on Raw or SmackDown. There was not a tag team title match at the last pay-per-view. There is looking like there won't be a tag title match at the next pay-per-view. So you have already run into the debacle of necessary matches being annihilated away because of the dual-branded pay-per-views.
Another thing we haven't touched on this show yet, and I do want to get into it in future weeks, 205 Live. Got to figure that there's going to be some cuts maybe from that roster. I don't know if maybe like a Noam Dar or the Brian Kendrick. That one probably won't really register for a lot of fans because 205 Live and the Cruiserweights really aren't even on Raw anymore. Remember that for about a year plus they were featured on Raw, at least for 2 segments every week. That's pretty much been non-existent. I think in all of like 2018 maybe there's been maybe 3 matches. So they've sort of gone away from that. But I always think that there's another option for guys that you aren't using prominently that you might consider getting rid of. Either if they fit the bill, you move them to 205 Live, or you can move people down to NXT. And I thought that it was the best thing for Tyson Kidd's career. Now, this is years ago, but it saved Tyson Kidd's career, made him prominent in NXT. Then he came up and he had a nice run on the main roster with Cesaro before it ultimately was cut short due to a career-ending injury. Would you consider moving any of these names down to NXT? Because you obviously WWE umbrella owns all these companies. If you have talented guys like an Apollo Crews, like a Ty Dillinger, don't you want them to stay in the company in some capacity and help, or do you pretty much say once you're up, if you don't cut it, you're gone altogether?
Once you're up, you're either in or you're out, because NXT is constantly redeveloping. NXT films 4 shows ahead of time. So you would be moving somebody, say the roster cuts happen in June, the first week of June. Well, that first week of June, they're also filming already, a month's work of NXT. So therefore, you don't cut that person, you move them down, and they have nothing to do for an entire month potentially. NXT is a constant redevelopment, and I think NXT's roster, a lot of people thought when Shinsuke left, when Joe left, when McIntyre left, AOP left, that it was going to, start to wear down. But, I mean, with Adam Cole, with Ricochet, with EC3, Velveteen Dream, Aleister Black, Lars Sullivan, the list goes on in NXT right now. I think the only weak spot of NXT at this current time is the women's division. I think there's Shayna Baszler, there's Kairi Sane, and there's Nikki Cross right now. I think those are the main 3 for the women's division. And the tag team division, well, it was Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish, but adding Roderick Strong into the Undisputed Era to fulfill that tag team necessity for them. You have some tag teams that are coming up. I forget who the tag team is that Undisputed Era is probably going to be facing at Chicago too. And then you have guys like the Street Profits who are fan favorites that are coming along strong. So I think NXT's roster is too stacked right now as in singles competition to say, hey, we're going to bring you down.
All right, so in closing, I want to get your thoughts on, again, I'll run down my list of people, and again, I hope that, no more than even half of these people ultimately end up being released, but Apollo Crews, Dana Brooke, Kurt Hawkins, Fandango, Heath Slater, Mike Kanellis, R-Truth, Rhino, Sin Cara, Tamina, Ty Dillinger, Zack Ryder, the Ascension, and the Colognes. Of that group, or maybe other people we've discussed, in your opinion, Sean, who is someone this company needs to keep? Who would it be a massive mistake to let go of for WWE?
Name that list again?
All right. Apollo Crews, Dana Brooke, Kurt Hawkins, Fandango, Heath Slater, Mike Kanellis, R-Truth, Rhino, Sin Cara, Tamina, Ty Dillinger, Zack Ryder, the Ascensions, and the Colognes.
Apollo Crews, Ty Dillinger would be the two worst. That shouldn't go. I think Zack Ryder would be a close third.
I would say Apollo's number one for me. He's a guy that I think is a world-class in-ring competitor, and I'm just waiting for that breakthrough moment, and I hope that it comes against someone like Seth Rollins. I've mentioned that time and time again. It would be tough to see some of these guys go. R-Truth had a nice run, and he has a role now as sort of comic relief. But some of the other ones, it never worked for him. A guy like Kurt Hawkins, his second time around, why? Well, why bring him back and then do nothing with him? His gimmick was terrible from the start with the face-to-facts. Dana Brooke came up way too early. I think that actually her role now is the best that she's ever been in. But as far as an in-ring competitor, I don't think there's any use for her. Tamina, probably overdue to move on from her. Some of the tag teams, as we mentioned, the Ascension never got their fair shake after a nice run in NXT. They were maybe a little bit early. If they had been prominent in NXT a year later, I think it would have really helped their cause. But, you know, some of these guys, they're journeymen that just you don't have anything for. Some of them, they've come up and you just haven't been able to ever really find something that works. I think Fandango's another tough guy to let go because you see the talent that's been there, but he's become such a joke over the past 3 or 4 years that you probably don't lose a lot if he ultimately moves on. And again, I'm a guy that thinks that Tyler Breeze is capable of being a real big-time player if he gets a singles run. So to me, Apollo Crews is the one guy that they have to keep. But beyond that, I could see this company realistically moving on from any of these people. It's just how they do business. They have to cut costs at times, and they have to create some space for the newer talent. So while it's unpleasant and something that is really tough if it's a superstar that you like that's being let go, it just seems like it's part of the business at this point for WWE.
Yeah, it is, and I think I listen to your list and I agree with, like I said, all but maybe 2 or 3 of those names that are definitely on the chopping block, and it's the nature of the beast. And I mean, the thing is, though, a lot of these wrestlers in WWE where, I mean, after you get released, you have like a 6-month no contact or no contract,
no compete
clause,
yep.
something like that, no compete clause. And but the thing is though, half of these wrestlers, if not 3/4 of them that get released by WWE, are more than capable of hitting up the indie scene or going to New Japan, Ring of Honor, or Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. I mean, they have spots that they can go into, and they'll continue to do what they have to do. And how many times do we see wrestlers get cut over the past and, you know, go on to the independent scene and really, you know, make a name for themselves and then come back to WWE and get re-signed.
How about two-thirds of 3MB? Huh? Jinder Mahal and Drew McIntyre. They come back, they win championships.
Yeah, I mean, Drew McIntyre, he left. He went to Impact and tore it up in Impact. And then WWE was like, wow, we dropped the ball on this one. We need to get him back. And, I mean, that's the thing. So, I mean, cuts are cuts. You go 6 months, you're getting paid by WWE 6 months, and then you're right in the indie scene because you're definitely signing for 6 months down the line.
Yeah, certainly for many of these people, it will not be the end of the road. It'll just be a simple detour in the road, and as we said, certainly could come back and maybe be bigger than ever before. That's going to do it. Glad that we could get to this, even though it's somewhat of an unpleasant subject, a fun one to at least talk about and to speculate and see what ultimately will happen over the next couple of months. But that's going to do it. This was part 3 of 3 parts. You can check out the other 2 up on our YouTube page as well from this week's episode. The first one talking about Monday Night Raw, the second one focusing on SmackDown, as well as following us on Twitter. Here's the handle right here, 5-Star Pod Wrestle. We do live tweeting every Monday, Tuesday, and during pay-per-views, and mix in some news in the wrestling industry as well. But that's going to do it for this edition of the 5-Star Podcast. For my colleague Sean Saputo, this is Sean Meyers signing off. You have been watching the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you again next week.